Hello, welcome to my workshop. Today I'm going to talk about one of my machines. This is going to be a kind of a semi-regular video series that I'll go over one of my machines in the shop. And the easiest one to do is one that I'm using actually right now. It's my pocket hole drilling machine. A lot of you are probably familiar with pocket holes, and you probably use like the Craig jig or some jig that's similar to that, where you use a step drill to drill the hole for the pocket hole. And Craig even makes a machine, but it still uses their step drill bit. This machine's a little different. It actually uses two routers to cut the holes. One router to drill the hole in the ends, and then the other one to kind of create the pocket. It's a machine that was, I believe, developed by a company called Castle. I think they're the ones that designed it or patented it, maybe. At some point, Porter Cable was making, back in like the 90s, they were making a tabletop version of it, maybe into the early 2000s, under license, I believe, from Castle. And I'm not sure, a lot of these machines, what happens is the original patent or license runs out, and then somebody else makes it and for less money. And that's what we bought here about, this is probably about 10 years ago or more, we bought this machine. It's actually, the name on it's Wurth. But Wurth is actually one of our sheet goods suppliers. So they're one of our suppliers for cabinet materials and hardware. And they all of a sudden started advertising they were selling this machine, and I looked at it, and from what I could tell, it's basically like a carbon copy of the Castle machine. It's the PHM-30. I don't know if they even still make it. It was about half the cost of a similar Castle machine. So the price was definitely right, and I believe it's made by in Brazil by a Brazilian company called Maksiwa, which you might be able to actually find one of their machines online. It uses 120 volt power, so any home shop it's fine for. It uses air, and it has an air clamp to hold the material to the table while it's drilling, and it also has air actuators to move the routers to do the operations they needed to do to drill the hole in the pocket. So you do need some decent air. Probably like, I'm thinking like a pancake compressor might just run constantly, but it still might be able to keep up with it. But you're better off if you, I invested in a decent size air compressor over there. It's got like a 5 horsepower motor and two-stage. This thing will last forever, hopefully. And it barely ever runs. So that's the nice thing about having one of those in your shop that I'd recommend, is that you don't have to listen to that thing running nonstop. So basically the way this machine works is, like I said, there's routers in it and there's air, and this control, actually, there's an on-off switch. There's a laser that comes on when you turn the power on that just shows you about where the hole's going to get drilled. And then there's this control, which is not, it's actually a speed control for the cycle, not for the motor or anything like that. So essentially, when you get to hickory and oak, the cycle is slowing down, and then on pine it's the fastest cycle you can have. And what I mean by cycle is how long it takes to move the routers. So how long it takes to move the one router, and then how long it takes to move the second router. So obviously, the slower the routers are moving, the easier they'll cut through like hardwoods and tough material. Whereas you can go a little faster if you're cutting like pine. I keep it set around like kind of between oak and hickory, and that seems to do, most of our face frames are some kind of hardwood. And then even our plywood, so we cut, and we do cut a lot of plywood in this, or drill a lot of plywood. And that's good for that too. You can see here, this is how we attach our face frames. There's like some cabinets we're making here. So we'll run these through. I can run like an 8-foot panel through this because it's on. It's on casters, So I can kind of tuck it into my limited space in my shop to get it out of the way when I'm not using it, but then pull it out when I'm using it. And it's easy to open up to change bits and everything. There's a little, let me see if I can, hand screw down there. You just loosen it and it'll stay open like a hood of a car. And now you can see the guts of it, a little dusty. I actually don't have the dust collector hooked up to this. It doesn't throw a lot of dust out of the machine. The dust stays in the machine. So it just kind of falls to the bottom, and every once in a while I'll hook up the hose to it. I guess I could hook it up. I don't really have a spare hose. Like, I do have a port for one there. So I don't know why I don't have it hooked up. I think I did have it, and it became an issue with rolling it back into place. It kept getting stuck. So I just took it off, and it's easier for me just every once in a while to go in there and clean it out. That's actually probably a lot of pocket hole sawdust in there. So you basically have two Bosch routers. This is like a Bosch trim router. This is like a kind of a little heavier than a trim router, Bosch router. And this one's got like a 3/8 inch, just a two flute Diablo bit. I did actually buy some nicer bits that were designed for pocket holes, and they didn't run as well. They kind of burned. So I didn't use that. And then this is just some kind of drill that's in there, which I probably should change that. I keep a couple on spare because these will break especially when you use it a lot. So it's handy to have. And there's a jig that comes with it to set the height, because you need to set this height precisely on both these. And so there's a jig that basically just sits on this that'll give you the height you need to do it. And you can kind of see the air cylinders are there. So I think that's an air cylinder. That could actually be an electric. I'm not even sure. That might be an electric actuator. So it might not even be air actuated. There's an air going back here and up here. That's to the clamp. So I'm not sure, actually. So you can see there's an air distributor in there. It works a foot pedal, actually, controls the machine to turn it on and off. So you got your hands free. So it's pretty maintenance free. You just lift this up to get it back down. I'm doing it one-handed, so it's a little harder than you. And then just tighten the little thing down. I'll show you how I use it, though. It's pretty straightforward. I'll kind of zoom in. Hopefully I don't get too much in the way. And you'll see the clamp come down. I'm going to step on the pedal. So to turn it on, just turn the on-off switch. See the laser right there. It has, these actually go to the fence to, you can actually set some spacing. I do it all by eye. It's just easier doing that. You just get it perpendicular to the fence and flat on the fence. And then I just step on the pedal. And it runs through the cycle, and you have your pocket hole. And then I'm going to do one on the other side. I do two. These are 2-inch face frames. And then the two there. I think the router bit actually needs to be changed. It's leaving a little bit of fuzz around it. So that's the piece. Turn it off. You see, like I said, it's leaving a little bit of fuzz there, which probably means the bit's getting a little dull, although it's not burning or anything. It makes a horrible sound. I think that router's, in my opinion, a little underpowered. for what these are doing, but I think that they're limited in, how big a router they can actually put in that harness to move it. So they can't go with a big 3 horsepower router, or maybe they don't want to because it'll push it into maybe a 220-volt machine, or if you had two routers in there, you wouldn't be able to handle, like, get under the 20 amp power requirement maybe. But it does make a hideous noise. The Castle machine, their high-end machine, uses a spindle, not a router, and I'm sure that's smooth and it probably cuts great. Again, this is a budget machine. I don't know what we spent, but I don't think it was over 1,000. So, which is good for what it does. But if you do a lot of pocket holes, might be something to consider if you have space in your home shop. If not, there's nothing wrong with the Craig jig. The advantage to these holes is that these are actually 5-degree pocket holes, and the Craig jig is much steeper. They're much steeper holes. The angle of attack is much steeper because if you know, they're a little closer, so they go in on a steeper angle. The shallower angle, you can actually assemble a frame. If you're assembling a frame with the Craig jig, if you use that, you have to clamp it no matter what. But I could actually just like hold this when I put my screws in, and it won't drift. So there's that angle does make a considerable difference. There's a lot less drift with this. Where the Craig jig, if you don't have it clamped, your joint will skew, like 1/8 of an inch or something ridiculous. So that shallow angle is a little nicer. You do need to always use like the extension to get in there when you're drilling or when you're putting your screws in. But otherwise, nothing wrong with the Craig jig. I've used it for years. We still use it occasionally. If we're on a pinch on a job. Installing cabinets sometimes, but nice little machine. And again, it's all dedicated, so you don't have to drag all the drills and everything out all the time. It's all ready to go. All right, thanks for watching. Take care.